Final presenter is Chad Orn from the Office of Project Development. Chad grew up in the southeastern part of North Dakota, proudly graduating as a Bronco from Lisbon. After quickly realizing he was not going to be a professional athlete, he did the next best thing and attended NDSU, earning a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering in 1999. Chad has worked in the design, environmental, and transportation services and programming divisions at the NDDOT prior to his current role as the Director of Project Development. Chad also served in the North Dakota Army National Guard for 12 years. When Chad is not at the DOT, he enjoys spending time with his family, watching a variety of sports on TV, hoping they find the treasure on Oak Island, and trying to figure out whether Bigfoot could exist. Chad, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jeff. Can you see my slides here, Jeff?
Gotcha.
Thank you. Hey, thanks everyone. I'm just going to take a few minutes here and talk about the bid ready pool projects that we're working on. I imagine quite a few of you probably heard about this, have seen this. It's been presented by various people at different conferences and discussions. So I'll just kind of run through it here. Okay. Just before I get started, I just want to pass on some gratitude. As Director Panel says many times, he offers his thanks and his thank you to the DOT and all the DOT partners that help deliver what the DOT does, their mission. So as we know, this last year has been extremely challenging with the pandemic, but we continue to design and build projects, both with staff in the office and staff externally, and that includes both internal and external staff. I know it's been changing environments for lots. A lot of people had to head home, had a lot of distractions, both in the public, their job, plus in their private lives, and you had to balance all that, but we kept the program on tap. We bid our projects and we constructed them. So I just want to give a big shout out and a thank you, and Director Panos passes that on also. So the bid ready pool projects, what is it? It's an apartment initiative. It's not just OPD, it's an apartment initiative, which we're trying to create an average of about $200 million worth of projects outside of the upcoming construction year that can be bid. So within 30 to 60 days. So basically it's having a bid ready pool projects to select from, basically having a good portion of a construction season on the shelf and ready to go. You may ask, well, why are we doing this? Well, it's to be ready for changing conditions and funding. Right now they're working on federal legislation through Congress on highway bills. And if you listen to a lot of the rumors and talk, as there is every year, it's going to be bigger and better. Well, eventually I think it may get there. So we need to have projects that are ready to go and shovel ready for that. So we want to be prepared for that. Grants, Director Panos has put an emphasis on grants. That's a focus. We put a team together here at the DOT that's exploring opportunities for grants, and we're aggressively pursuing those. What grants means is we're bringing in new money. With new money, we need projects to fill those grants, or if we take projects that we had done previously for the grants, well, we need projects to backfill. So that's, again, where this pool projects comes in. And then on the state side, with state funding, if you're following through the legislative session right now, there's a couple different bills on bonding. Some of them have an impact to providing dollars to the DOT or through some of their partners. And also there's a motor vehicle tax increase that's floating around over there in the legislature that passed one side. So with both of those, that could present an influx of state funding that we would have to adapt to, again, having projects ready to spend that money. So what does it consist of? The bid ready pool project's going to consist of projects within a 4-year STIP. So you might have a project that's in year 2023 at a STIP, but we might look to have that project done in 2022. So we're going to have that project done early. In the event we get money, then we have the ability to use it. It's going to include non-current new non-STIP projects. So maybe projects outside of the STIP But projects we know that will be coming in a SIP shortly that we want to get out on the street or we want to work on internally to have ready to roll. And then our districts are going to play a key role in this, that they would be able to ready to have PM projects, whether it be seals, thin lifts, overlays, and other things that they're able to accomplish. Either have them shelf ready or be able to get those projects ready within that 30 to 60 day window. So what's changing? Well, the no bid dates is something it's been like that for a while. So if you start to see probably more aggressively starting out in the 22 year, we're putting a lot of our projects are ending up in a 1/1 bid date. So say 1/1 of 2022. We're not actually putting them in bid openings. We're putting them in a bid date, we're calling it, I guess, but we're just putting it there for now for a holding pond. And then we'll create programming division will work with divisions throughout the DOT here, and then they'll create bid openings later in the fall, towards the end of the year, and we'll create bid openings. But what that does by putting it in the 1/1, it gives us the ability to vary the project completion dates. So you might get a project that says 1/1 of 2024, and it might have a 6/1 of 22 completion date. So we're trying to that's the way of getting the projects on the shelf. So we're really trying to move away from focusing on the bid dates, and we're trying to focus more on the project completion dates. Now, project completion date means the project would be completely done. That'd be not just the plans, but that would be all permits, all right of way, SPs, specs, all the other components that we need. And the other piece that we're looking with is that what's changing is the minimal rework. And Justin touched on this with the spec book. We're going with a yearly spec book. So there's really, there might be a chance where we're going to be bidding projects within a bid opening that may be based on a different year of specs. So there might be one based on the 21 spec book, one based on the 22 spec book. And the point of that is not having to rework everything to make it fit everything that of the current, because the more time we spend going backwards, the less time you can focus on trying to move this forward. Some of the benefits that we see of doing this, like I mentioned before, we can utilize new funding sources. So, and then the hope is that we can bid more projects in a timely manner. If we have the projects ready to go and we get the dollars, we can get them out on the street quicker. We can change that current practice of just-in-time or on-time delivery, where you have a bid opening and 8 weeks prior to the bid opening, we have the project completion. Well, if we're missing some components of that project, then you got to move the project, or you got to try to condense everything, and that just doesn't work. So we're looking at getting rid of the just-in-time. That's why we're focused on the bid pool with varied project completion dates. The hope is that we reduce the number of addendums. If we have more of a complete set of plans, that would allow us time for obtaining permits and any right-of-way prior to them being placed in the bid opening. So hopefully we wouldn't have to do addendums to add the SP that has to do with environmental permits and considerations and changing the plans if we don't acquire right-of-way or do acquire right-of-way. Just the hope is that we can cut down on that, which that's great. We hope to limit the movement of the projects. So like I said, programming will draw from that pool of projects and set the bid openings. So hopefully once we set those bid openings, those projects are complete. So then we don't have to worry about, hey, this project's not done, we need to move in a month. Oh, we need to move in another month. So hopefully it'll bring some consistency into that. And also it can provide us opportunities to adjust or relocate utilities in advance. So if we have a project done 6 months ahead or a year ahead of time, maybe we can get out ahead of time and adjust some of the utilities, which we know can sometimes become problematic in the construction phase. But of course, with all challenges, or with all benefits become challenges, there's also some challenges to that. So one other thing, I guess, one other benefit is lead time, so we can better manage our resources. So if we vary the project completion dates, that'll give us ability to spread out our staff time and consultant staff time when they're working on stuff. Instead of everything being done all at one shot, we can spread it out. As I mentioned before, onto some of the challenges. Managing the pool projects prior to bid opening. Again, we're going to have these projects on the shelf. We got to find a way where we're going to put them, where we're going to manage them, make sure we have an account of which ones they are. We're currently in the process of trying to build some form of a dashboard to keep track of this so we can be transparent with people to know what's in the pool, what's there to choose from, kind of have a tracking. Minimize the amount of rework on pool projects. As I mentioned before, we want to try to minimize that work, whether it be specs, whether it be turn lane lengths, whether it be anything of that nature. We're going to try to limit that. So some of this may need to be addressed by a special provision prior to bid, or maybe on a change order or something. Obviously, it doesn't mean we're not going to change anything, and that's where we're going to work closely with Justin and the rest of the design team. And if there needs to be some changes to it, we can see about doing the changes. We'll just see how much of that affects across the board. The construction year, as I mentioned before, and we're going to have multiple spec books potentially in a bid opening. As we have discussed this with the industry, we got some comments back that said, well, they already bid on projects for Bismarck or for Fargo or for other states, and they use different specs. They got to look at those specs. So we've heard that a lot of comments back having this shouldn't be too big of a problem. We're just going to kind of see how this goes, but just to know you have to closely watch the year of the spec book, as Justin pointed out in his presentation on that title sheet. We might have to change how we do time constraints, because sometimes we sign right away or agreements and they expire. So we got to look at if we're going to have these things and they might be getting them done a year or so early, and when they're going to get bid, we might need to extend that out. And that's something we're considering to look through, and that's a challenge we're dealing with. And of course, change how active or supplemental data is shared with the contractor. So we share data online on the website with links and stuff like that. So we might have to find a way to how to place that information, either with maybe in a proposal instead of on plan websites or something. But there's some more challenges that we're, of course, working through as we go along here. But ultimately, one of the key components of getting these projects on the shelf is getting back to the basics: avoid, minimize, and then mitigate. So we got to continue to work together and look for opportunities that we can, first of all, avoid, and we try to minimize and mitigate. A lot of people know that right-of-way permits, a lot of that stuff, it comes at the end. We don't provide a lot of time sometimes to get those things, but the less right-of-way we need to acquire, the less permits we need to go grab, and that type of stuff, that's ultimately gonna save us time. So again, work with your team that you work with on the design of these projects and try to avoid, minimize, and mitigate. Look for those opportunities. Something I like to say that I learned when I was in Indianapolis is at some leadership training is the juice worth the squeeze? Is it really worth it? Is it worth impacting those utilities to get an extra foot in the ditch? Is it worth acquiring that right away, or having to mitigate that wetland either on site or off site for what we're getting? That's conversations that we would like you just to consider as you roll through this stuff and as you work on plans. With that concludes my presentation.